guys, welcome back to The Bright Side. Macy here, the Bright Side Girl, and today we're doing my January reading wrap up. So I think I'm going to be doing my wrap ups a little bit differently. I'm going to give you guys a couple of stats before I go into what I read for the month of January. So first up, I will be talking about the types of books that I read, where they came from, so whether it was the library, my TBR shelves from the past few years, or whether it was something I bought in 2019, and also how many books I read off my actual January TBR list. So before I do that, if you guys aren't familiar with my reading wrap-ups, this is going to be purely the books that I read in January physically. So I will also be doing an audiobook wrap-up, which will be up tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. If it's already up, I'll put a link for it down below in the description. So for January, it was kind of a weird month. I only read 7 books, and 4 of those were graphic novels. One of them was like 3/4 of a book and one of them I technically finished in February. So anyway, I had company in town that stayed with us for 5 days. I had a big class that I do for work that I help with on the weekends that takes up quite a bit of our time. I also had my cousin in town, even though she didn't stay with us, and there was just a lot going on. My weekends were busier than normal, so I didn't physically read very much. I know it seems like I did, but not really when you look at everything considered, but that's okay. I kind of knew that going into the month. So anyway, like I said, I read 4 graphic novels, which up until this point I had only read like 3 graphic novels in my entire life, so that was interesting. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then I read 2.5 books, which we'll get into in a second. Only 2 of these books came from my TBR, and technically they were something that I acquired in January, so none of these came from like my past TBR shelves, unfortunately. The other 4 were all from the library, and there was a specific reason for a couple of those, but that's okay as well. As far as reading my January TBR, I read 1 book from that, so yay me. That book was Snow Like Ashes by Sarah Rosh. I don't own the first one, but I own the next 2, which was why this was on my TBR to begin with, and I was hoping to get to all 3 of them this month. It just didn't happen because this one took me 2.5 weeks to read, mostly because I just wasn't reading very much. I was only reading like 20 pages at a time because we had company in town, and I just putting Christmas away and so many things. Like, it was just a really crazy January, which is not usual. And this book is over 400 pages, so not super huge, but a little bit on the chunkier side. That being said, I really liked it. I wound up giving it 4 stars. This is a fantasy series set in its own unique world where there are 4 different kingdoms essentially, and they are all different seasons. So we have winter, spring, summer, and fall, and they all have different names like the Wintarians and different stuff like that. And they all are kind of like fighting against each other, and some of them aren't doing so good and some of them are doing great. 16 years ago, the Winter Kingdom was conquered and enslaved, leaving them without magic or monarch, and there are only 8 Wintarians left that have escaped and survived, and so they're on a mission to free their people, steal back their magic, and win over their kingdom once again. And one of those is the surviving heir of the Winter Kingdom. His name is Mather, and our lead character's name is Mira, and she is an orphan girl who is being trained in combat to help them like complete this mission. And there's a lot of complexities and things and a lot of magic and fun, adventurous stuff. This book is super fast-paced, so if you're looking for a fast adventure book, this is the one for you. It reminded me a lot of Daughter of the Pirate King in that way, as far as just like, it was very funny. Our lead character was extremely sassy and intelligent, and she was really hilarious, and her combat skills were amazing, and it was really fun to read about. It was very fast-paced, and it was like almost with a level of silliness for a fantasy that you don't normally get, as far as like just the lines that she said and things like that. So if you like that kind of, I don't want to say lighthearted because it wasn't a lighthearted book, but it has a lot of funny elements and just fast-paced adventure to it. So I really, really enjoyed it. Really excited to carry on with the series. I didn't continue on this month because, like I said, I finished this like in 2.5 weeks. It was like the 17th of January, and I was just like, there's no way I'm gonna get to all 3 of them, and I had other things that I wanted to get to, so I just decided like not to get to them right away. I also made the mistake of listening to The Cruel Prince on audiobook at the same time that I was reading this, which I'll talk about in my audiobook wrap up. I don't like to read fantasy and listen to fantasy if I can help it, or I like to at least make them a little bit more diverse. They both had very diverse elements, but they were both with kingdoms and kind of orphan girls being trained, and they had very similar aspects when being read and listened to, and so I would sometimes get things mixed up a little bit, which was unfortunate. And I was really, really enjoying The Cruel Prince, so I was actually listening to that before I went to sleep instead of reading this, which is another reason this took me longer. And it wasn't that it was bad, I was so tired that I just wanted to listen to something instead of like using my eyeballs. Anyway though, I gave it 4 stars. I really, really liked it. I think I'm gonna love the rest of the series. It's super, super fun. I need to find it so I can purchase it. And yeah, this is the first book that I read. Then I decided just to, I don't know, I've just been having a lazy January, and I just wasn't in the mood to read. I was like almost in a reading slump. I think because I felt bad that I wasn't reading faster because my friends were here and I just wasn't reading as much, and I somehow felt guilty, which is really dumb. But I decided to give myself a break, and I read Saga Volume 1 and Saga Volume 2 by Brian K. Vaughan, illustrated by Fiona Staples. My good friend Letitia brought me these when they came to visit. These are adult graphic novels that are super hyped on BookTube. They are very, very adult. They are very, very graphic. There's a lot of violence and sexual content in these books, like weird sexual content, like more than I was expecting, and I was prepared for a lot. That being said, I really enjoyed them, and I've come to find out I am loving graphic novels. I'm so shocked. They're just so easy to get through, and they're so fun visually that I think it's just like, it's more relaxing for me to read a graphic novel than a regular book, especially like in between like maybe an intense fantasy. So I'm loving them, and you'll see because I read a couple more. The first one I think I gave like 3.5 stars, and the second one I gave 4 stars. They are just on the weird side, maybe just a little bit too much for me. I'm really enjoying the series. I'm definitely gonna see it like all the way through. They just have that weird sexual stuff that I'm not like into, as far as just like, I'm okay with like there being sexual content in books and graphic novels, but there was like weird versions of it that I'm not thrilled about. But overall, really cute, super attached to the characters. Definitely only recommend these if you were an adult, but I'm enjoying them so far. So because of that, I decided to read Runaways. This is the complete collection of Volume 1. Technically this would have counted for like 8 graphic novels, but I didn't do that. I just counted it as 1, and so I wouldn't have like 17 books on this list. But this is also by Brian K. Vaughan and illustrated by Takesha. I don't know how to pronounce her name, and I can't really read it because of this library cover. But the reason I decided to pick this one up is because I want to read all of Rainbow Rowell's books this year, and she has written the newer version of this. I don't know if it's with Brian K. Vaughan or if it's a completely different thing. I was really confused because she has a Runaways graphic novel, but then there's also a Runaways book that she didn't write, and then this one she didn't write. So I think I figured it out. This is the first collection of graphic novels, and it was more popular towards the early 2000s, and they have redone it, and she worked on the first volume of the newer part of the series, and then someone wrote a book, and now it's a TV show on Hulu. So I wanted to read it so that I could read Rainbows, and also so I could watch the TV show. So this is about a group of kids who find out that their parents are evil, like satanic ritual bad guys, and they decide to run away together and discover that a couple of them have powers, and there's this whole other world that they didn't know about, and superhero stuff, and there's a dinosaur in here, and it's really, really, really good. I gave this 5 stars because I freaking loved it. I'm really excited to watch the TV show, even though it's probably gonna be bad, but that's okay. Super good, very surprising, really, really enjoyable. The graphics are great. This is definitely appropriate for young adults. There were no sexual content that I saw in here. Really loved it. I'm waiting from the library to get Volume 2 complete collection and Volume 3 complete collection so that I can continue on with the new stuff. But okay, so for those of you that don't care about graphic novels, I'm gonna throw this one in the middle. So then I had decided to read Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy. let's talk about this for just a red hot minute. So I DNF'd this last year because I listened to the final book in the Mortal Instruments on audiobook. And it was like a 20-hour audiobook and it was super long. And I was doing this whole read along thing with Emma Books' channel. They were doing it and I was following along. Then to try to do the Bane Chronicles on audio, and someone said it wasn't absolutely necessary, so I went to this one. I just wanted to read Lady Midnight and I didn't care about this book. So I was kind of irritated that everyone said there were spoilers from here in the other one, and I don't know. So I DNF'd it. I was just like, maybe I'm just not a Cassandra Clare person. Like, I gave all of her books like 3.5 stars, except for like 2 that I gave 4 stars. And I just wasn't as into it as I wanted to be. And I was kind of upset because I felt like I was missing out on the fandom. And I have Lady Midnight, which I was so excited to find. And I was just like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to carry on. Maybe I'll just like not. But for some reason I decided to get this book. If you guys aren't familiar, this is like a bunch of novellas. I think there's like 8 in here in the Shadowhunter world. Apparently there's like spoilery things in here. And so I was like, okay, I'll just get it from the library and I will just like read the novellas a little bit at a time, and however long it takes me is however long it takes me. And then I will read Lady Midnight or start Lady Midnight and see how I feel. So I skipped ahead for the first 2 because I'd listened to those on audiobook already. And then I started on the 3rd one. And I was reading it and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is not gonna be that hard for me to get through. Like, I'm enjoying it. And then I read the 4th one and I was like, okay, this is really good. And then I read the 5th one and I was like, dang, I'm super into this. Yes, I went country for a minute. And then I gobbled up, I think I was 200 pages in, and I gobbled up the last 450 pages. I mean, I read them so fast. I was so into it. I loved it so much. This is ironically my favorite Cassandra Clare book. I gave this one 4.5 stars. I adored it, and I only gave it a half star because of this first 2 stories, which I'm convinced was the audiobook. I don't like the narrators that they pick for Cassandra Clare's audiobooks, at least the ones that I've listened to. And I just really actually enjoy physically reading her books. Like, it's easy for me to get through them. I am fully invested in the characters now. Characters that I didn't really care about before. I wasn't like that attached to Jason Clary and all that. And this just like is following along with Shadowhunter Academy. And the only thing that annoys me about this book is that I don't like when novellas are required to read the other book, because a novella is supposed to be backstory and a little bit of fun extra information about your characters that might kind of help you out, like if you're a super fan, but isn't crucial to the story. But the fact that you like have to read this before you read Lady Midnight, otherwise you'll be confused, is upsetting, because you follow along with your characters in here and you find out a lot of additional information that is very important, I'm assuming, to Lady Midnight. Plus, you get some of your Lady Midnight characters in here, so it like pre-attaches you to them and also is a nice transition from the Mortal Instruments into the Dark Artifices. And there's characters from Infernal Devices as well. I just loved it. The ending was really shocking, especially for a novella, and I just loved the way everything went down. I absolutely adored it, and now I just am so thankful that I decided to read this after all, because I loved it so much. I had to talk to my husband about it, and I cannot wait for Lady Midnight now, because apparently there's a lot of fairy stuff in Lady Midnight, and this is the year of the fairy for me after like my audiobook month that I had, which you'll see tomorrow. I can't even explain how happy I am that I am now on the Cassandra Clare train. This book made me like her other books more. Like, I'm more likely to reread them because I love this one so much. I don't know if it just was me being with the characters long enough or what it was. I'm hoping that it's not the fact that she had help writing this, because Sarah Reese Wren, Maureen Johnson, and Robin Wasserman also like contributed somehow. I'm really hoping that it's not that, that's not the reason that I love this book, and that it's not Cassandra Clare's writing that was throwing me off before. We'll see with Lady Midnight, but I loved this book so much and I'm so happy I read it. Next up, we're going to talk about Nimona, one more graphic novel. So this one I originally thought was a full-length novel, and I didn't realize when everyone was talking about it that it is a graphic novel. It is a very large graphic novel. It's a one story in one book. It's not a compilation like the Runaways was. This one was a National Book Award finalist. I don't think it won, but this is by Noelle Stephens, and this is so amazing. This was a 5-star read for me. This is about Lord Blackheart, and he is the villain of this world, and it's just like a thing where there's like villains and heroes, and he is like a mad scientist type villain, and he gets surprised one day with Nimona, who says that the institution supplies the heroes and villains, sent her to be his sidekick, and she is a shape-shifting teenager, and they're in this world with like magic and dragons, and his nemesis is Sir Goldenloin, and it's got a bunch of fantasy tropes in here, but then it's got its own unique spin, and Nimona is absolutely freaking hilarious. I was like giggling while reading this graphic novel, and the images are absolutely amazing. It's just so much fun. I didn't realize I could love a graphic novel so much, but it's so close to my heart. I loved it so much that I went and listened to the audio production, which I was like, how do you do like an audio book for a graphic novel, because the visuals are so important, but they did an amazing job, at least for me knowing the story in advance, and I'll talk about that tomorrow in my audiobook wrap up, because also 5 stars. I listened to it. It was only like 2 hours. I wish there was more in this universe because I'm totally obsessed. I want a full-length book on it. Let me know if you guys love Nimona like I do, because it's literally like the warm and fuzzy feels for this one. Sorry if it got dark. It was just like a major thunderstorm, so I had to take a break until it was over. But the last book that I read in January, and I read most of it in January, I read like the last 60 pages, February 1st and 2nd, but I wanted to talk about it in this video just because it's really detailed and fresh in my mind and I hadn't filmed the video yet, was Stain by A.G. Howard. I had 5 days left in January after I finished like Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy. I didn't want to pick up the next Snow Like Ashes book, and this one was in at the library. This is a 2019 release. It came out on January 15th. It was one of my most anticipated of the year. This is classified as a Princess and the Pea retelling, and A.G. Howard is known for her retellings. She's done Splintered, which is an Alice in Wonderland, which I need to read, and Roseblood, which is the Phantom of the Opera, which I also need to read. First of all, let's just talk about this amazing cover. Is one of the reasons I wanted to read it, with this gold lettering and this beautiful purple girl with her beautiful eyelashes and her beautiful thorny crown and all of the flowers. This is a library book that I need to get ASAP. It has this amazing map on the inside, which is rare for a standalone. The chapter headers are like thorny roses, beautiful like almost end pages that match the cover. Oh, okay. I didn't realize that this book was like 515 pages when I got it. And I, in my head, was like, I can totally finish that in 5 days. No, Macy, no you can't. I read this in 9 days, which I still think was really, really good, because this book is dense and it is not a fast read. It is huge, first of all, and not just in the like page count, but also in like just the density and like the actual size. Show you in comparison, it's one of those like heftier YA books that's like on the larger side. So not only are there more pages, but it's longer, it's denser, it's super detailed. This one, honestly, in my opinion, reads more like an adult fantasy, which I haven't read a ton of those, but it's just a lot more descriptive and very detailed and very intense. This is definitely a slower read as far as just the world building is very thorough. The character backstories are very thorough. The character arcs are very thorough. There's not quite as much dialogue as there are in some other books. This one reminded me a lot of Uprooted, even though it's not really the same, but like there's a lot of magical forests in here and just like kingdoms and battles, and I don't know, it just gave me Uprooted vibes, especially how long it like took me to read it. Like I enjoyed my reading experience, but it definitely was like a lot denser than I was expecting, and I think I would have liked it even more if I hadn't tried to like cram it in the last minute. This one I wound up giving 4 stars. It's a solid 4-star book. In my opinion, this is not a Princess and the Pea retelling. That's just like really extremely loose First of all, the Princess and the Pea origin story, like the original fairy tale, is very short. It's basically a prince who can't find a worthy princess, and the queen sets up a series of tests to see if a princess is real, and they put a pea under the bed and she can feel it and gets all bruised, whatever. That has none of that in here, like, really at all. In fact, it like turns that fairy tale on its head, and the prince is actually looking for a princess that is more like hardy. So this is a tale about two kingdoms. Wound up getting split in two, and one kingdom wound up taking the night and one kingdom wound up taking the day. So one kingdom is always in the daytime, and they have more daytime type creatures like birds and rabbits and butterflies and things like that. And then the nighttime kingdom is always in the dark, and it's a little bit colder, and they are concerned more with like crickets and moths and spiders and nighttime creatures. There are like poisonous roses in here that kind of separate the two kingdoms. There are witches, there are sylphs, which are transforming humans into animals. There's sorcery, there's prophecy, there's princesses, there's princes, there's magical sunlight, magical moonlight, magical stags. The world in here is so in-depth and so detailed, like the back history of the world, the prophecies that are foretold. And so the main plot of this book is our lead character, Lyra's mom, got stuck with a rose that was enchanted, wound up having Lyra, who is more of a nighttime princess in the daytime realm. So she has like paler skin with silvery hair and wispy long white eyelashes, and she's more connected with the night creatures. She can't go out in the daylight or she burns her skin, so she winds up having to stay locked up in the castle, and they have to do things to kind of protect her. So the whole book is about her and her story and the two kingdoms trying to fix their problems that come with not having daylight and not having moonlight. And I'm doing a horrible job at describing this because I don't want to give spoilers away, and it's just so detailed and so rich, but it is a much slower, denser read, and sometimes I would find myself like zoning out, like just because I was trying to read it too fast, I think. But I loved how detailed it was. I became very attached to the characters in here. There's an amazing bad guy in here that is a female character. She's awesome. She's so evil and awful. If you like fairy tales or kingdoms and princesses and princes, this is just amazing. I think this is like a hidden gem type of book. The prince in here is fabulous, which I haven't gotten a lot in my fairy tale retellings. Usually the princes are like, they kind of turn it on their heads, and the prince isn't really that great after all, which I understand, but it's great to see a really cool prince in here. There's a twist that happens with him. I just can't even describe how detailed and beautiful this book was. It read like an original fairy tale. I don't know. I like believed it was real, honestly, in my head, because it was that well written. Again, much slower and denser, definitely not going to be for everybody, but I really loved it. I think it's a really special book. This is a standalone, so it's one and done. So that can kind of help you with this giant behemoth of a book. But I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars, and it was a great way to like end the month, even though I finished technically in February. Okay, you guys, so those are the 7 books that I read in January. I listened to over 10 audiobooks. Some of them are really short, but stay tuned for that video that's coming out tomorrow because it's really exciting, and I had such a great audiobook month. It was so much fun. If the video's already up, I'll put the link down below in the description. If not, you can wait until tomorrow to check it out. I had a pretty great reading month overall, considering that I didn't technically read as much as I normally do, if that makes sense. But I did get 2 like really chunky books down, so that's awesome. I post videos every Monday, Wednesday, and sometimes on the weekends. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time on the bright side.